Welcome to Missouri Election Protection Training for the November 5th, 2024 general elections. We're so glad that you're here. Today's training will take us through everything you need to know to help protect the vote at the polls on November 5th, 2024. This training is being brought to you today by the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition. We're Missouri's nonpartisan state voting rights table. We work to advance free, fair, and accessible voting for all Missourians, with particular focus on communities whose voices are underrepresented in our democracy, communities whose voices have been historically silenced in our democracy, and communities whose voices are the targets of new voting laws to make voting harder. Communities of color, low-wage workers, young voters, seniors, voters with disabilities, English plus communities, and sexual minorities. And we do this by anchoring 4 areas of work in Missouri, including policy advocacy on voting rights, strategic litigation on voting rights, voter education and engagement, and this flagship program, Election Protection. And we invite you to join us. We meet every Monday via Zoom. Sign up for our action alerts by texting MOVPC to 66866. So today's program is going to take you through an overview of Missouri's election protection program, the roles that you can play out in the field, how you can sign up for your shift, how you can report issues at the polls, and we're going to workshop the top scenarios and issues that you're likely to face with voters at the polls this November. So hopefully by the end of today's training, you'll have a sense of what election protection is, what your role is going to be, how to answer common voter questions, how to escalate voter issues at the polls, and where you can go for help. So a few of the terms we're using today: election protection, that is the program we are running here. This is a nonpartisan program. It is part of the National Election Protection Coalition that works to ensure that every voter is able to cast a ballot. Poll monitors. Poll monitors are folks who participate in this election protection program to monitor polling places and provide assistance to voters at the polls. This is different from a poll worker. Poll workers are folks who are temporarily employed by the local election authority who work inside the polling place to process voters. It's a very important job, but it's also a very different job. LEA, that stands for Local Election Authority. We sometimes use this abbreviation when we want to refer to the local election authority. In Missouri, we have 116 local election authorities, each of whom are responsible for carrying out elections in their counties. The command center, that's our election protection command center where the attorneys gather to answer the calls, to discuss escalated tickets, to work on issues that come up at the polls, and to engage in advocacy to help resolve problems. And that escalation team, these are the attorneys who are specialized in particular fields that can help when problems arise and are not getting resolved. This is the team that is going to be doing the advocacy with our election officials. This is the team that is going to be doing legal advocacy, litigation, and filing lawsuits if necessary. The hotlines are the phone numbers that people can call or text. Voters or poll workers or poll monitors can call or text to get help and talk to one of our lawyers right there in real time. So what's this program? Election Protection is the nation's largest nonpartisan voter protection coalition. Missouri Voter Protection Coalition is in this group, along with approximately 300 other organizations around the country. There are election protection programs in approximately 40 states. We have been operating this program here in Missouri since 2006. We are one of the flagship programs across the country. And our goal is to ensure that every eligible voter is able to cast a ballot and make their voices heard on election day. And that's really our primary purpose. Everybody can cast a ballot. We are not here to tell people how they should vote. That's for campaigns. That's for people that are working on the ballot issues. We are really there just to make sure that every voter's voice can be heard, regardless of who they are voting for. And we're really the only folks out at the polls who are there solely for the voter. Not only are we there to make sure each individual voter is able to cast a ballot, but being out at the polls and having the hotline helps us identify and solve problems quickly, solve problems immediately before they escalate into even bigger problems. It allows us to address deceptive practices right in their tracks, stop voter suppression right then and there. And doing this all around the state with all of our volunteers allows us to collect data, uncover obstacles, and identify more systemic trends that will be used for future advocacy and legal action. We take the information from our election protection program and we can use it to advocate with the legislature for reforms to election laws. We can use it to advocate with election authorities to update practices. We can say, look, it appears based on the number of complaints we got about voter ID that you need to expand some of the training that you're doing with poll workers on this issue, for example. Oh, the hotline is one you may already have seen or heard. It's 866-OUR-VOTE. It's real important we help get this hotline out because if we don't hear from a voter, we can't help the voter. And that's another reason why having folks at the polling places or roving between polling places, being a presence out in the community can really help ensure that we can get the assistance to voters that they need in real time. You can call or text 866-OUR-VOTE. That's 866-687-8683 with any questions or problems that you have. We are already getting calls into the hotline now with people who have questions about their voter registration status, where to vote absentee, or questions about their absentee ballot applications. There are also hotlines with our national partners that can speak to voters in their language of origin. So there is a Spanish language hotline, 888 VE-VOTA, that can speak to voters in Spanish and English. An Arabic language hotline, 888-844 YALA US, that can speak to voters in Arabic and English, and 888 API Vote that can speak to voters in Chinese, Vietnamese, Korean, Bengali, Hindi, Urdu, and Tagalog. Because we know it's important for voters to be able to have access to the tools they need in a way that's accessible to them. So here's how our program works in Missouri. The voters can interact with poll monitors and roving monitors who will be out in the field. Poll monitors will be assigned to polling places. Roving monitors may be assigned to a whole cluster of polling places and go visit one after the other after the other. Dispatch monitors are folks that can be dispatched out from a polling place where we might not have a monitor when a question or problem arises. They're all going to be interacting with our attorneys who will be in our command center. Our escalation team will be in a Zoom room, even though the attorneys themselves will be answering calls into the 866-OUR-VOTE hotline. The Zoom room for the attorneys allows us to discuss and work through problem issues that come up and make a determination about what action needs to happen. It also allows you as the poll monitor and the voter to speak immediately in real time to an attorney. So here's a photo of the call center that's located in Missouri, in Kansas City, Missouri, at the Stinson Law Firm. We're very grateful for them opening up their space to do this and their attorneys. Here are some of the escalation lawyers. We partner with a number of civil rights organizations and affinity bar associations like the Mound City Bar Association and the Jackson County Bar Association to do that escalation work. So here's how the process works. Voters or monitors can call 866-OUR-VOTE. You'll call into the hotline. That call will be answered on election day by an attorney in Missouri. They will get some information about the caller, either the voter or the monitor. Find out, get your name, your phone number, where you're calling from, and basically what the issue is. Is it a question? Is it a problem that's coming up? And if it's just a question, for example, caller might call and say, what time are the polls open? Well, then the hotline volunteer can say, your polls are going to be open 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's all the voter needed. That ticket gets marked as resolved and we're done. However, issues that are reporting problems, for example, if the caller calls and says, hi, they're telling me I can't use my driver's license, which recently expired, to vote. That is an issue that will go to our escalation team. They will then and they're then able to spend more time on the phone with you and the voter compared to the folks that are just answering the hotline. And they will say, okay, so let's go through and figure out what the issue is here. And here, while I'm on the phone with you, we're going to walk you through and help make sure that you can cast your ballot. And if that doesn't work, the escalation team takes it to the next stage. We contact the election authority. We have them issue a directive to the poll manager to let that person vote if that's the right legal thing to do. If there are bigger issues that are going up and the election authorities do not agree to our requests for intervention, then we can engage in litigation or other action. And we've had to do that on a few occasions, but most of the time, when we contact the election authority with the voter, with the poll monitor, we've done the homework in advance. We know we're right on the law, and the election authority tends to take the corrective action that is needed. And that is so important that we're able to do that immediately and in real time, because on election day, things are hectic, and even small problems at the polls, if they're not addressed immediately, can grow into very big problems. Even a small holdup in the line can quickly turn the lines into very, very long lines. So we join you, we ask if you be part of us. Here are some of our poll monitors across the state of Missouri doing the great work that they do. So step one, make sure you're signed up. You probably got to this training today because you did sign up, but if you're not signed up, you got this from a friend, sign up at protectthevote.net. This is the portal that will allow you to go through the process and actually sign up for your shift. Protectthevote.net. When you do so, you will get you'll get an email that will say, welcome, thanks for signing up. Click here to go to your account. Then you go back and it will provide you with a list of trainings. As you've indicated that you're in Missouri, it will list all the trainings that are coming up. We will have more trainings added the week of October 28th. And we will also have a recorded training on demand that you can watch on your own time. So here's what the process will look like when you sign up at protectthevote.net. Oopsie. Hang on a second.
Volunteers will go to the protectthevote.net website. Once they scroll down, they will enter their information, their first and last name, email, mobile phone number, zip code. They will agree to the Election Protection Nonpartisan Agreement, and then they will opt into automatic occasional messaging, and then select Submit. It will show them this message, and then they will go to their email address. Once they're in their email address, they will use this magic link to log in. Once they have logged in using the magic link, they will confirm their information, So ensuring their first and last name is correct, their email, their phone number, zip code, their state is correct, and then they are required to choose a county. Once they've selected their county, they will select save, and then they can go and find a training. They will search for trainings. They will see all trainings available. They will select the training that they would like to attend. This is a virtual training, a little description. They will select the time that they are available and the date. And then we will say, yes, I want to receive messaging reminders for text. And yes, I want to receive messaging reminders for email. And then I will register for the training. It will give me this information, letting me know that it is virtual. Here's the training link. And if I need to reschedule, I can reschedule training by selecting.
All right. Oopsie. So that's how you sign up for the training. Once you have completed the training, which you can do, again, either live or watch on demand, you'll get a link thanking you for signing up for the training and directing you to this very, very short several question quiz that will ensure that you actually watch the training. It's very simple, and then it will take you to the ability to sign up for your shift. So you get to select your own shift. And that's one reason why you were asked to indicate your county. It will show you the polling places in your location. The shifts we've selected are the times that tend to be the busiest. We've selected 3-hour shifts, but you can always sign up for more. 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. when the polls first open, and 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. After the workday when the polls are getting ready to close tend to be the busiest times of the day, but we can use your help at any time of day. So here's what the shift sign up will look like.
Once a volunteer has successfully completed the training and passed the quiz, they will be able to sign up for a shift. So they will go back into the database, select find a shift, and then enter their zip code, address, date, or time, or some sort of factor to filter. I'm going to enter Broward and select filter. And all the shifts that are populated in Broward County will appear. So I'm going to find a shift. This one is 10.96 miles. You can also be very specific and type in your address to find out which one is closest. And I'm going to sign up for this shift at the Southwest Regional Library. I want the time from 3:30 to 7:30 and select sign up for shift. It says I have signed up for shift successfully. And then let's say I want to do another shift. And maybe I want to do one that's at Chapel Trail Elementary School. Let's do one for an earlier time. I've successfully signed up for that shift as well. And then back to the home base. And at the home base, volunteers will be able to see what shifts they signed up for. So I signed up for 2 shifts, one at Chapel Trail Elementary School on the 19th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then the other one at Southwest Regional Library from 3:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And that is how volunteers find their shift, sign up for a shift, and they're able to see the shifts.
All right. And of course, if you have any problems dealing with your shifts or getting signed up, don't hesitate to reach out to Missouri Voter Protection Coalition or your regional coordinators who can help make sure that you get signed up. All right, so now you've been trained, you signed up for your shift, it's time to get ready for Election Day. So depending on where you are located in Missouri, you will get an email explaining where to pick up your materials. The materials you'll have with you include our election protection palm cards, a button like the one I'm wearing here, and a t-shirt like the one I'm wearing here. You may also be picking up a sign if you are a person who is going to be volunteering for the very first or 6 a.m. shift. That will vary from county to county. You may pick up a yard sign though and be asked to place that at your polling place. All right, we're getting ready for election day. So what you want to do is you want to charge your phone, since you want to be able to use the phone to call 866 our vote for issues that may come up. Wear the gear identifying yourself as an election protection volunteer. That way voters know that they can come and talk to you. Please make sure to not have any partisan gear on. Doesn't mean you can't on your own time support the candidate of your choice or the ballot issue of your choice. But in order to maintain the integrity of election protection, we want to make sure everybody can vote and all voters feel comfortable asking for help. We want to make sure that we are clear that we're here for every voter, no matter how they're voting. Dress for the weather. We know that early November in Missouri can bring a range of weather. It could be cold, it could be hot, it could be rainy. Wear comfortable shoes. I can't emphasize that enough. Bring your phone, have a charger if you've got that. Feel free if you want to bring snacks, a folding chair. If you feel like you want PPE or a mask, that's fine too. You will be outside in front of your polling place. So who's my local point of contact? Well, we have a number of regional leads across the state of Missouri who serve as the regional leaders for those areas, who will be on the ground and who are organizing the volunteers in each of those regions. So for St. Louis Metro, which includes St. Louis City and St. Louis County, your regional directors are Holly Bernstein and Michelle Steinberg. In St. Charles County, Don Crozier is leading that effort with the League of Women Voters. In Kansas City, it is Pat Jones-Macklin and Anita Russell. Anita's with the NAACP. Pat Jones-Macklin is also with NAACP, but also with the A. Philip Randolph Institute and the Faith and Labor Alliance. In Southwest Missouri, it is Marla Morantz with the Southwest Missouri Voter Protection Coalition in partnership with Faith Voices and the NAACP and the League of Women Voters. And in Boone County in mid-Missouri, it is Sharon Schneeberger and Marilyn McLeod with the League of Women Voters. So what happens? Well, on election day, you want to go to your polling place at the time you've selected. When you get to your poll, you want to set up. You want to be sure to stay at least 25 feet from the door. Now, how do you know where 25 feet is? You don't need to bring a tape measure or anything like that, because everybody, it's a state law. Everybody has to be at least 25 feet from the door. And so you'll see that everyone is set up around the same area. Pick a place where you are visible, where you can be seen, and where voters can approach you. As people are coming in to vote, we know there's going to be electioneers there, but you're going to be the only one that's there, not trying to sell them on any candidate or ballot issue. We suggest that you approach voters as they're coming in, hand them a voting rights palm card or the election protection business card and say, "Hi, I'm a volunteer with election protection, here to answer any questions or help you with any problems you might have at the polls. Don't hesitate to reach out to me." There is an opportunity when you first arrive to complete a polling place checklist that you can do on your phone. You can do that at any point during your shift. It will ask you things like, is there signage indicating where the accessible entrance is? Is there adequate parking? Is there a sign for curbside voting, etc.? As you go through your shift, voters who approach you with questions or problems, or if you observe things that are concerning to you, like intimidation at the polls, call those things into 866 our vote. You'll be on the phone immediately with one of our lawyers, and you will talk through how to address or respond to that problem. If you are serving as a roving monitor, the primary difference between a poll monitor, where you're going to be at one poll for your entire shift. A roving monitor is someone who will be going to multiple polls during their shift and spending maybe a half an hour or 20 minutes at each one of those polls to do an overview, to observe what's going on, to see if there are any problems, and to complete a polling place checklist. And that will help us see, gee, are there places where that may need additional materials? Are there places where things seem to be a little hectic and maybe we want to reassign or send a monitor to that polling place? We do have these car magnets that roving monitors can use to put on their cars. While you are at your poll, you'll be able to complete a short reporting form that will allow you to document kind of overview conditions at the polls. This is really helpful because it allows us to get a sense of whether things are running smoothly. Also, what sorts of issues or problems are coming up. For example, maybe there's no handicap parking, or maybe there's no accessible.
Today I'm going to show you how to complete the Election Protection Volunteer Incident Report. This is a critical part of being a volunteer, and you will have access to this link from your state lead, and you can fill this out as many times as needed. So for each state, it's going to look similar to this. You will have your volunteer name. A drop link will appear with all of the names of the volunteers. You will go and find your name. If you do not see your name, you will add it to this link right here. So you will add your polling place. Again, a drop link will appear with all of the different polling places. Add the one that you're at. What kind of report is this? So you'll have a few options. So is this a specific voter having a problem, or is this a problem at a polling place? And so for each one, different questions will appear. So what kind of issue does the voter have? You can select the options. So let's just say voter registration issue. What is the voter registration issue? And it'll give you a bunch of different options for the specific issue. Let's say inactive voter. You can also add subcategories. So this is someone, this is someone that's in person trying to vote. This is someone that had an absentee or mail-in ballot. You add the voter's name, their last name, their address, the city and zip code, their phone number, any additional notes you'd like to add, giving just more descriptive information about what the problem is, their voting method, any images you'd like to add, so you just select attach, drop here. And does someone from the command center need to follow up with this? And then dropping down will appear yes or no. So for each issue, for the reporting, it'll be a different set of questions. So if there's a problem at the polling place, a different set of subcategory questions and types of problems that are in the drop-down menu will appear. And that is how you complete the incident reporting form for a volunteer.
The nice thing about this reporting form, and you can use it to report a problem, although if there are problems that are coming up, I strongly encourage you to call the hotline because you're going to be on the phone immediately with one of our lawyers. The nice thing, though, about this reporting form is that you can do the checklist or the tally, where we can then start documenting what the conditions at the polling place look like. And when you do that checklist, it will ask you things like, did the polls open on time? If you're maybe a 6 a.m. Volunteer, is there adequate parking? Is there adequate signage? Are there people engaged in aggressive electioneering or intimidation? You can add a photograph. So you can, if you see something that's going on at a polling place that is concerning, you can take a photo or a video with your phone and you can just upload it from this tally. And the idea is that this program is designed to work with your cell phone. So hopefully it's easy, but again, if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you can always pick up the phone and call 866 Our Vote. So the materials, we are obviously in 2024 now. You're going to be handing out our election protection palm cards to folks, and we're going to kind of talk about how to get started so that people know they can talk to you. That's one of the big questions we get. How will people know? Well, you're going to let them know. And so here's just an example of how I like to approach voters. You're also going to be proactive, looking for things that that are concerning that we might be able to help with, say long lines or disruptions or someone yelling and screaming at a polling place. That does not need to happen at a polling place. So as people are coming in to vote, or if there is a line, you can proactively reach out to those voters. I usually say, hi, my name's Denise. I am a volunteer with the Nonpartisan Election Protection Program. We're here to make sure everybody can vote. Here's some information about your rights. Let me know if you have any questions or any concerns. And people who have questions or concerns are going to then tell you, oh, thanks. Hey, I was wondering, is this ID that I have adequate to allow me to vote today? Or, yeah, I do have a question. My kid doesn't get off work until like 6:30. Can they still come and vote? And you can then engage in a conversation. And the best part of it is that most of the questions that they will have, the most common questions, are actually answered right on our palm card. And so you can show them on the palm card where the information is. This is something they can take in the polling place with them. Knowing that they have the information is very empowering, and it allows voters to even be able to advocate on their own behalf because they've got the information right there. They can show it to the poll worker and say, listen, I understand that it is my right to show an expired ID as long as it expired after November 2022. All right. So we're wrapping up the kind of process part of this. And just to some final reminders here. As a poll monitor, can you volunteer with other organizations, parties, or campaigns? Sure, just not while you are also doing election protection. So if you want to take a 3-hour shift for election protection and then go volunteer for your favorite candidate, that's fine. You just can't wear that candidate gear while you've got your election protection information on, or while you're wearing your election protection hat. Can you stay for a second shift? Of course. Can you vote during your shift? Yes, you can. And the election protection t-shirts that you have, these are not considered electioneering. Electioneering is something that advocates for something that is on the ballot. This is completely nonpartisan. You can go vote. If you are volunteering somewhere in St. Louis City or St. Louis County, for example, where you're allowed to vote at any polling place in the county, feel free to go vote during your shift. Although you may also want to consider voting early during the 2-week early voting period, just to get that out of the way. Now, can you ask someone how they voted or suggest who you vote for? No. Can you distribute partisan material or ask voters to sign a petition? Not while you're doing election protection. Can you challenge a voter's eligibility? No, that's not your job. Your job is to help voters who work through the process. If a voter has been challenged, you can let them know what their rights are and how they can cast a ballot. Should you engage in a confrontation? No. Okay. Whoopsie. So finally, call a hotline at 866-687-8683 to report any problems and get help answering any questions you have. Remember, you are not alone. You are not alone. Even feel free to sign up to monitor in teams of 2 in pairs, so you've got a buddy with you. But even if you are monitoring a location by yourself, you're not alone, because you've got all of the lawyers just one phone call away. You've got roving monitors who can come and join you at your poll location in an instant when you call us, and we are there to help make sure that you can provide the assistance to the voter. So when in doubt, call. When in doubt, call the hotline. Again, we're nonpartisan. We help all voters. This is not the place to share your political beliefs with voters or other volunteers. I mean, obviously, if you're there with your own friend or buddy, you can have conversations amongst yourselves, but this is not the place to do advocacy. For the attorneys on the line, do not refer to your voter as a client. You are an election protection volunteer. You are providing assistance. You're providing legal information. While we may ultimately escalate the problem and represent the voter at that point with the polling place, that's not where we're at. Be polite. Don't get into arguments. We know that the temperature is high, that the vitriol is high. Let's try to bring the temperature down. We're not here to engage with people who are being intimidating. Document them and report them. All right, we're going to jump into some top scenarios you may face at the polls. But before we do, we'll see if we have any questions. Any questions about process? All right. So getting into some of the key issues and scenario planning that you may face at the polls. The first one is the very first one, voter registration. There's always people who show up and they're told they're not on the voter rolls. And we're going to talk about now how you can address those issues. By the way, for the attorneys and the law students who may be watching this, the numbers that appear at the top of your screen are citations to the section of Missouri Revised Statutes, the legal statute that governs this particular issue. For the attorneys and law students, these citations are also included in the legal FAQs that you are receiving as a legal volunteer. All right. There are a number of reasons why a voter might show up at the polls and get told that their name's not on the list. As you can imagine, that's a pretty distressing situation for the voter who thinks they're coming here to vote in a presidential election. It might be that it was just a clerical error. It might be that the voter moved to a different county and didn't update their voter registration. In Missouri, registration is county by county. It might be that the voter didn't register to vote on time. In order to vote for this election, November 5th, 2024, they needed to be registered by October 9th. So there might be some confusion of whether that voter is registered. So if a person was never registered in Missouri before, they did need to complete a voter registration application by October 9th in order to be eligible to vote in the November 5th presidential elections. People who registered to vote after October 9th will be registered just for future elections. Missouri does not have same-day voter registration. However, if a voter was already an active voter in Missouri and moved but didn't update their registration, they can do so even on election day, but they have to do that at their election board headquarters. This is something you can call in to the election protection hotline, and our hotline volunteers can get on and figure out where this person is in fact registered to vote and help get their registration set up so that they can go in and make sure they can cast a ballot. So here's a couple things that you can ask if the person comes out and distressed that they're being told they're not on the rolls. You can ask, do you remember where you registered? When did you register to vote? Is this the first time you voted? Have you moved to a different county? Do you remember updating your voter registration? Did you receive a mailing from your local election authority before the election. This is a really good one because this is something that all the election authorities send out right before election day. I just got mine in the mail yesterday, and it looks maybe something like this. It will say official election mail. The mailing may look a little different from county to county, but it will say official election mail. If you got that in the mail, it means you are on the list of registered voters. So that's a really good sign. And that's why this is a great question to ask. People who have moved, like I said, can update their registration if they were already Missouri registered voters, but they'll have to do so at the election authority office. Where do you vote? One thing you can do is check that mailing you got from the election authority. You can also check your polling place at sos.mo.gov/elections. Or you can even call us at the 866-R-VOTE hotline, and we can look it up while we're on the phone with you. And keep in mind that polling places change. And we've had a lot of polling place changes, especially since the pandemic. And we've had some changes in how voting can occur. So for the first time in 2024, voters in St. Louis City will be able to vote at any polling place. Voters at St. Louis County can vote at any polling place. Some jurisdictions, like say Greene County or Boone County, they will have both some county-wide vote centers, or you can vote at your local precinct that serves your home address. Other jurisdictions, like say Jackson County, you have to vote at the polling place that serves your address. So that's why checking the mailing you get from the election authority will inform you about that. So now in St. Louis City, for example, this is the notice that they send out with a list of a number of polling places and a QR code that you can scan to find the rest. We will be posting these other jurisdictions on our website. As a last resort, if a person's at a polling place and their eligibility cannot be established, at a minimum, they have a right to vote a yellow provisional ballot. These are ballots for people who they can't find on the rolls. They vote the ballot just like everybody else, but that ballot gets placed into a yellow envelope. It gets set aside. It goes back to the election authority. The election authority checks that person's registration in the statewide voter registration database after the election is over. And that way, that database has the full voter history. That way they can figure out maybe what went wrong. Maybe it was a typo, right? Maybe somebody updated their registration and their name was Sam James, and somehow because of the handwriting, it got entered into as Sam Jones. And that's why Mr. James didn't appear on the list at the polling place. That's the kind of thing they'll be able to figure out and then count that ballot if it turns out that in fact the person was registered to vote. You don't have to memorize all of the things I'm telling you here today, because the information on what to tell the voter if they have this problem is contained on these palm cards that you're going to have in your hands. So up on the back side, right at the top, what if my name is not on the rolls? And for those of you who are lawyers or law students, the information about provisional ballots is at section 115.430 in the Missouri Revised Statutes. So let's talk about absentee voting. We are in the middle of absentee voting right now for the November 5th, 2024 elections. No excuse absentee voting runs from October 22nd until 5 p.m. the day before Election Day, 5 p.m. Monday, November 4th. For people that need to get a ballot in the mail. The deadline to make that request is Wednesday, October 23rd. The local election authority must have your request in hand by Wednesday, October 23rd, in order to get a ballot in the mail. But again, anybody, any voter in Missouri can vote in person without a reason from October 22nd until November 4th. You can do so at your local election authority or for the larger jurisdictions at satellite polling locations that they've set up, and you can go to any one of those. For people who need to vote by mail, you will need to indicate one of the reasons to vote by mail. And when you get that ballot in the mail, absentee voting by mail, by the way, is at section 115-279 of the Missouri Revised Statutes. You will need to indicate, if you get a ballot by mail, one of the reasons listed here. Complete your ballot, put that ballot in the mail, and unless you are casting your ballot while detained or because you are confined due to illness or disability, or serving as a caretaker for one, where you don't need a notary, the rest will need a notary. It's also important to see that you can get now a ballot in the mail, not only if you are working as a poll worker, but also first responders, healthcare workers, and any members of law enforcement can also get that ballot in the mail. To request an absentee ballot in the mail, you'll need to submit a request. You can get that on your local election authority website or on the Secretary of State's website. You want to indicate the reason and be sure to sign, and they'll get that ballot to you in the mail. Again, we recommend that anybody who needs to do this, do it quickly because it can take some time for these things to go back and forth through the mail. Your absentee ballot, if you do get it in the mail, can be returned either in the mail or it can be returned in person to the local election authority by either the voter or by a close relative. So if you've got maybe an elderly relative at home who's confined, they get their ballot in the mail, and maybe they don't complete it until a little close to election day. If you are within 2 degrees of consanguinity, say a parent or grandparent, child or grandchild, sibling or cousin, niece or aunt, you can deliver that absentee ballot back to the election authority in person on behalf of that voter. There was a law that was passed in Missouri in 2022 that made it a crime for anyone to solicit a person in obtaining an absentee ballot application. That provision is not on the books, and so you are free to assist people in getting an absentee ballot application if they need it. So what are the issues you may face on election day? The most common is that a voter says they applied for the ballot but never received it, or that they want to return somebody else's ballot to the polling places. If the person applied for an absentee ballot, but either they never received it, or they damaged it, or they never got it filled out, they can still vote at the polls on election day. They'll complete a statement saying that a lost ballot affidavit, and they can vote a regular ballot at the polls. Now, what if you got your absentee ballot, but you never filled it out? Bring it with you. You can surrender it. It's called spoiling it, and vote a regular ballot. If you have somebody else's ballot, say if I brought my mother's absentee ballot with me, I cannot return that to my polling place. I can only return it to the election office, but I can, because she's a close relative, return it to the election office. Again, all of these provisions are listed on the palm card that you'll have with you. And there's a whole provision here that says, what if something went wrong with my absentee ballot? Second, ID. This is an area that has a lot of confusion because Missouri's law has changed. Voter ID requirements are at 115.427 of Missouri Revised Statutes. In 2022, Missouri lawmakers passed a law requiring a strict photo ID to vote. What this law did was eliminate forms of ID that Missourians could use to vote. This may be a source of confusion for some voters. Missourians have had to show ID at the polls for more than 20 years. All Missouri voters have had to show ID to vote for more than 20 years, but we allowed a range of forms of IDs. The 2022 law eliminates a number of those, leaving just a Missouri or federal ID as a valid form of ID. So you can no longer use the ID you get from your election authority. You can no longer use a student ID or other government document that certifies your name and address. You will need to show a government-issued photo ID like a Missouri driver or non-driver's license, a military ID, or a U.S. passport that is current or expired after November 8th, 2022. And if you don't have one of those, you can cast a special provisional ballot that will be counted if your signature matches. We are in court right now challenging this law. This lawsuit has not been decided yet, but the law is in effect. We have completed our trial, and we don't expect a decision until much later in the year or next year. You can show a Missouri driver or non-driver license, a military ID, including a veteran's card, a United States passport, or any other photo ID issued by the federal government or the state of Missouri that is either non-expired or expired after the most recent general election, which is November 8th, 2022. So yes, you can use an expired ID as long as it expired after November 8th, 2022. If you encounter a voter that doesn't have one of those IDs, please inform them that they can vote a provisional ballot. That ballot, it looks just like a regular ballot, but that ballot gets put into a blue envelope that the voter completes and signs. It's really important that they sign it because the only way that ballot will count is either if the voter returns to the polls with their valid ID, maybe they just left it at home and forgot it the first time, or if they don't have it at all, that ballot will be counted if the signature on that provisional ballot envelope matches the signature that the election authority has on file with their voter registration. Again, this I know can be complicated and can be a source of confusion for many voters. All of this information is right here on the front of the palm card you'll have with you, and you can point it out to the voter, which will show exactly what forms of ID are needed to cast a regular ballot. And if a poll worker is confused, for example, and not letting someone use an expired ID or a veteran's ID card, for example, give us a call. We're going to make sure that they can get in and use that and cast their ballot. So here are some of the kinds of issues that you may face on election day. Situations where the ID isn't accepted, a situation where voters are asked to show multiple forms of ID, only one is needed. Voters who are told that their ID has to match their registration address. No, that's not true. Voters not being allowed to present a recently expired ID. Yes, they can. Voters who are told maybe you don't look like the photo on your ID, they're not allowed to question that. So here are some of the answers to those frequently asked questions. What ID do I need? Missouri or federal ID that expired after November 8th, 2022. Does the address need to match the address where you're registered to vote? No. Your driver's license lasts for 6 years. You may have moved since then and updated your registration. Can you use an expired Missouri ID? Yes, as long as it expired after November 8th, 2022. What about a student ID or a driver's license from another state? No, nor can you use the ID you get from the election authority, and you cannot use a digital image. Some voters in 2022 were allowed to use a digital image. If they didn't have a Missouri ID, they had a digital image of their passport, for example. That will no longer be accepted. But if your appearance doesn't match, you can still vote. There are lots of reasons why we may not appear on election day the way that we look in our state ID photograph. And that can be due to many, many reasons, massive weight gain or weight loss, glasses, facial hair, undergoing medical treatments, undergoing gender transitions. And so for people who are non-binary, transgender, the poll worker cannot scrutinize your appearance or the gender marker on your ID, but the name on your ID needs to match that name on your voter registration. Again, anybody can still vote a provisional ballot if they don't have a valid ID. And people that lack a valid ID, there's quite a few of them who are registered to vote but don't have a Missouri ID, and these voters may be deterred from participating and may be ashamed if they are turned away at the polls. And so that's one of the reasons why we are in court, because it can be burdensome to get a state ID. Moving on, accessible voting. Voters with disabilities make up a significant proportion of the electorate, but have some of the lowest voter participation rates because of various barriers to being able to make their voice heard. The Missouri Foundation for Health in September 2024 issued a report showing that over 326,000 Missourians with disabilities voted in the 2022 midterm elections, and that's just those who voted. There are plenty more that end up staying home because they fear barriers to the ballot. There are also many voters who have limited English proficiency, and that might be because English is not their first language, or it might be because they're low literacy and didn't have access to education. It might be because they have a condition like dyslexia that makes it really difficult for them to read lengthy materials on a ballot. The November 2024 ballot is very long. There are many ballot initiatives that have lengthy descriptions on them. People in these circumstances may find it challenging to read or cast their ballots. And what I'm here to tell you is that these voters have a right to assistance. While Missouri is not required to provide translators or bilingual ballots, there are state and federal laws that guarantee that voters who need assistance in voting or accessible voting are entitled to it. What does accessible voting look like? First, you have a right to assistance. So any voter who needs help reading or casting their ballot before, during, or after voting can get help from any person of their choice. And that's true whether or not your need is due to sort of a physical disability, or whether it's due to a hidden disability like dyslexia, whether you are low literacy and need help reading, whether you need maybe English isn't your first language and you need help translating the ballot measures, whether you may have a mobility issue and need help filling in those circles, whether you need help getting access to an accessible machine that will allow you to cast a private ballot. I have a client, for example, who's legally blind, who, as long as she is able to get headphones plugged into the accessible machine, can use the prompts to cast a private ballot. Otherwise, she's going to need someone to read the ballot to her and fill in the ballot for her. And keep in mind that person who's providing assistance doesn't need to be 18, a registered voter, or even a US citizen. Oftentimes, new American citizens may, who are maybe not proficient in English, take their children in to help translate for them. We are in court right now to help ensure that voters are able to get the assistance they need. But I'm here to tell you that Section 208 of the Voting Rights Act does ensure that people are allowed to assistance by a person of their choice. So we really want to make sure that people know they can get help and they should not feel embarrassed asking for it. And a poll worker doesn't have a right to demand that that assistant leave the voter alone in the voting booth. Voters with disabilities who would have difficulty getting in to the polling place have a right to vote curbside from their cars. If your polling place is not accessible, and that really may be the case for polls that may be in very, very old buildings, you can have your polling place reassigned. People who find themselves in the hospital or confined after the date to get an absentee ballot in the mail can have hospital voting. The election authority has to come to you in the hospital. They send a bipartisan team to vote you in the hospital. As you can imagine, this is a significant burden on the election authority, but they do have to do it. The sooner you hear about a person who may be hospitalized, maybe they get into a car accident or God forbid, have a heart attack or something like that, that lands them in the hospital, the sooner we can get that information, the sooner we can help ensure that an election team gets down there and gets their ballot to them. People with disabilities do have a right to an accessible machine. While Missouri does use paper ballots now that get inserted into a Scantron, every polling place must have an electronic machine accessible to people with disabilities that have a variety of tools that individuals with disabilities can use. And the machine should be lower as well to ensure access by people who are in wheelchairs. Please call us right away if these machines are not working or if people are reporting that they're not present. People who are confined may want to consider for future elections signing up to be on the permanent absentee list where they'll automatically get an absentee ballot application for each election. One of the issues that we tend to have a lot of problems with every election cycle is curbside voting. It can be confusing for the voter and taxing on the poll workers, but it is required by law. Anybody who feels that they cannot get into the polling place or stand in a long line inside the polling place can request to vote curbside as long as they're parked within 200 feet of the polling place. The poll worker needs to come out, bring the ballot to you. You'll hand your ID. You'll do the entire transaction from your car. They have to come out and do it. Anybody can alert a poll worker of a voter who needs curbside voting. So in the city of St. Louis, they are now required under a consent decree to have a little buzzer, a doorbell that is about car height that you can reach out from your car and press that buzzer. Some jurisdictions will have signs that look like the signs on this slide. Some will not. As long as anybody alerts a poll worker, hey, the person in the blue Chrysler outside needs curbside voting, that's enough to trigger the curbside voting request, and they have to come out and vote the voter. They cannot make the voter wait till everybody else in line has done or sit in their car. Please call if you're experiencing problems with curbside voting or if there are no places for curbside voters to park. There do need to be some designated handicapped accessible places at the polling place. These are common problems we get, and we are able to resolve them if we get notice of them quickly. Finally, I know people are really concerned about disinformation and intimidation at the polls. We are too. And we have been working with our partners to create protocols to ensure that we can de-escalate intimidating situations quickly, promptly, and immediately without elevating or escalating the problems. And these include things, false misinformation, deceptive flyers, any kind of invasive presence at the polls, brandishing of weapons at the polls, blocking or impeding entrances to a polling place, people being overly aggressive. So here's what you're going to look out for. And these are illegal under Missouri and federal law. Disorderly conduct, baseless challenges, intimidating voters, spreading false information, interfering with a voter at a polling place, even intimidating police presence. So what do these look like? You can never intimidate a voter, discriminate, or interfere with the right to vote. The kinds of buffer zones or poll watcher rules or rules about photography or firearms differ from state to state. So please don't forward everything you see on the internet. It may not apply in Missouri. Here's what the rules are in Missouri. In Missouri, people who are serving as challengers can be inside the polls, but they have to be pre-credentialed by a political party. Their names have to be submitted ahead of time, and they cannot talk to voters or disrupt voters or the polling process. Poll watchers or electioneers have to be outside the polls, but they have to say outside the buffer zone. In Missouri, that is 25 feet. They cannot impede or block any sort of pathway to get in or out of the polling place. In other words, but they can't make you have to sort of traverse around them in order to get into the polling place. They can't get in a voter's face. They can't intimidate voters, right? Photography. Photography is not allowed inside of a polling place. So you can't take pictures of people casting their ballots inside the polling place. Photography from public streets is okay. It starts to get a little iffy if you're seeing people engaging in sort of photography in ways that are intimidating, like photographing people's license plate numbers. Call those things in, because it really is going to depend on the context. Firearms. Missouri is an open carry state. There may be people that have firearms in their vehicles, but those cannot be brandished at a polling place. And polling places, similar to schools, are places where you cannot bring a firearm into a polling place or within that 25-foot buffer zone of a polling place. So nobody should be brandishing firearms at a polling place. If people are shouting, making racially insensitive comments, and we've seen this around the country, or blocking entrances, what action should be taken? Call us right away. Call 866-OUR-VOTE. Let us know this is going on. Photograph the situation. Take video of the situation if you can. Document or record how voters are experiencing the situation. It is not just the action itself, but it is the context of how it's taking place and how it's landing with voters that really makes the difference. There are legal options to get this information, this kind of conduct stopped, okay? This information, again, is on your home card. All voters have a right to vote free from intimidation, no matter who. And that includes police. Here's the law in Missouri at 115.635. It's illegal to induce, threaten, impede, prevent, attempt to indeed or prevent any type of voter intimidation, right? Is not allowed under Missouri law. It's also illegal under federal law. Under Section 11B of the Voting Rights Act, makes intimidation illegal. And these are real felonies. Intimidating voters is a 5-year felony under federal law, 10-year felony to conspire to do it or any sort of violence. So nobody can be within 25 feet of the entrance of the polling place. And this includes police officers who are not allowed to intimidate voters. Now, the final thing I want to share about police officers, they do have a right to be at polling places to conduct police business. It's not uncommon for police officers to, for example, transport election officials from polling place to polling place so that they can observe how the elections are going on. It's not uncommon for police to go to polling place to pick up and securely transport midday ballots back to the election authority so they can start counting them. What police should not be doing, however, is they shouldn't be standing just at the door at the entrance of the polling place and make people have to walk past them. They certainly shouldn't just be standing inside at a polling place or be standing near the check-in table or at any place where they can observe people casting their ballots. Their cars should not be parked in a way that voters have to traverse around a marked police car. This can be very intimidating, particularly for communities that have been over-policed, right? That may have relationships of intimidation when it comes to police. And we've heard a lot this year that some jurisdictions are saying, well, we're going to up our police presence at polling places because we're concerned about intimidation at the polls. That can cut both ways, right? And so really context matters. So how do you know? You call us. You call us, you document, take a photo, upload it on that on the checklist. So here's the things you want to call in. If you're seeing long lines that aren't moving, right? It's one thing if people are really seem to be going through fairly quickly. We are concerned about long lines this year. Missouri's ballot is very long. It includes all of the candidates, all of the ballot measures, and all of the judges as well. It's going to take people a long time to cast their ballot. Any sort of problem that takes place inside the polling place is likely to make those lines much longer. Similarly, broken machines. We get issues about this every election day. The sooner we can get that reported, the sooner we can get it fixed, right? The fewer sort of machines to take those ballots, again, the longer the lines happen. Poll workers giving incorrect information, which may be unintentional. Remember, poll workers are recruited from just society. They're not people that do this as their day-to-day job. Call us because we can get this addressed quickly. The sooner we get it done, the less likely it is to escalate. Intimidating flyers, multiple voters reporting that they're not on the rolls, high use of provisional ballots, polls that are not opening on time, polls that are closing early, voters who need language assistance, or a polling place that's not physically accessible. And keep in mind, you can still vote in Missouri. If you have a felony record, people who are off probation and parole are eligible to vote. If your home is in foreclosure, it doesn't mean that you're not on the voter rolls. You can still vote. And you can still vote even if you have unpaid parking tickets, unpaid child support, unpaid taxes, even a warrant out for your arrest. You should probably deal with those things, but they are not going to stop you from voting. And police can't have, for example, a list where they're sitting there watching you come in of everybody who has a warrant and arrest you when you show up to vote. Those are things you should take care of, but they cannot stop you from voting. So we're happy to take any questions, and don't hesitate to reach out to me, to the Missouri Voter Protection Coalition at info@movpc.org, or your regional coordinator with any other questions you may have. Thanks so much, and we'll see you at the polls.
Denise, will